kind words and for the chance to meet some of you and to hear all this incredibly inspiring stories and about all of your achievements. I first met Kalief Browder about, let's see, a little more than a year ago, February or March of 2014, and I wanted to write about him for all the reasons that Bob mentioned, because just from the beginning I could see that his story encapsulated just about every single thing wrong with the criminal justice system: solitary confinement, you know, the list goes on and on, guard brutality on Rikers Island, lack of effective counsel, incredible court delays in the Bronx. And then when I finally got the chance to meet him, you know, I just from that alone, I knew this had the potential to be a strong story if he was interested in talking. And then I actually met him, and he turned out to be this incredible kid, incredibly smart, incredibly insightful in talking about his experience, and just a really remarkable kid. And at the same time, he had zero desire to be in the spotlight. He didn't want to be, you know, he didn't want everyone to know his name. He didn't want everyone necessarily to know the details of his life. But at the same time, he just felt like what he'd gone through he could not just go silently into the night. It just wasn't right. The fact that one day he stood in court after holding out for 3 years and refusing to plead guilty, and then the judge says, you know, you can go home as if nothing happened. He was like, it's not okay. I can't just let that go. And that's why he allowed me to interview him many, many times over the next months. In a story, we published a story in the New Yorker last fall. And in those course of those interviews, one of the things he said to me was like, you have to get the videotape from September 23rd, 2012. And I was like, get the videotape? How am I going to get a videotape from inside Rikers Island? Also, how could you possibly remember an exact date of something that happened when you were in solitary and they didn't let you have a calendar? But he was like so determined that if I got this video, that would be, you know, that would be like a very important thing to get. And then somehow, this past April, I actually did get that video, and it was that exact date, and he was totally right. And I sat there with him and watched it, and maybe some of you have seen it online. It's a video of him. He's in solitary confinement on Rikers. An officer comes to his cell to escort him to the shower, and instead of actually doing that, throws him to the ground and assaults him. And what looked to me like a crime, but for which this officer was not really, I don't think, disciplined. And so I'm watching the video with him, and I say, listen, you know, you've already been in the New Yorker. I don't have, you know, do you want me to put this online or not? I'm going to leave it totally up to you. I'm not going to pressure you. It's your life, it's your experience. Do whatever you want. And he didn't even hesitate. He just said, put it up. And we put that video up and a second video that you might have seen of a kind of extended assault that went on in the adolescent jail on Rikers Island. And as the months went on, Kalief seemed to be doing fairly well. He was enrolled in Bronx Community College. He, this past semester, had a 3.5 GPA, which is an astonishing achievement, considering he missed 2 years of formal schooling while he was locked up on Rikers Island. It was really a testament to the fact that every day he was like sitting in his cell in solitary and reading anything he could find, trying to educate himself. But even though he seemed to be doing better, at the same time, I knew that he was greatly suffering. You didn't have to be a psychiatrist or psychologist to see it in his eyes. The trauma that he had endured was almost beyond words. And then June 6th, it was a Saturday afternoon, I get a call on my phone, and I see it's his lawyer calling. And I just know that this is not going to be good, because it's Saturday afternoon, and I know it's about Kalief, and I had no idea what had happened, but I just knew the news was not going to be good. And of course it was not, and he ended up taking his own life. He had just turned 22 years old about 10 days earlier. It's sort of impossible to know exactly what was going through his mind at that time, what we all might have been able to do differently to stop this from happening, sort of questions that can never really be answered. But I think in the big picture, his death is just, you know, very clearly a sort of straight-up American tragedy. You know, many people wrote about it, and you know, Ta-Nehisi Coates at The Atlantic wrote a particularly compelling thing, saying, you know, when we write about the criminal justice system, when we talk about it, it's always as if like this is just the way things are, you know. But in truth, it didn't have to go down this way. He didn't have to spend 3 years waiting for a trial. He didn't have to spend 2 years in solitary confinement. That was all the result of actions taken or not taken by people in power, people in charge, lawyers, judges, public officials, court administrators. And I think that realization is what's starting to sort of permeate the public conversation, not just about Kalief, but about our criminal justice system in general, and that in some ways we're all culpable when a system fails, especially in a case like this one. And that the idea that this is just how things are, that it's somehow normal to have 2.2 million people locked up, I think that sort of belief is starting to disappear, and that with the help of Kalief and his willingness to tell his story, enabled a chance to break through some of that apathy and indifference that has characterized these public conversations for so long. And lastly, I just wanted to say, how grateful I am for this award, for this recognition, and also just wanted to commend you for starting this award in the first place. Not only, obviously, for the opportunity it gives me to come meet all of you, but also because, reporters don't want to talk about this, but when you look at the big picture, the media played a very large role in the mess that we've got today, right? From teenage super predators, criminalizing children, inadequate coverage, racist sort of assumptions woven into news coverage over and over again. And I feel like the only way we're going to get out of this mess is if the media steps up and kind of, covers these issues with the nuance and the complexity that all of you are looking for. So that is starting to happen. I think, of course, it could happen a lot more. So I commend you for starting this award and holding the media's feet to the fire and making sure that the momentum you've already gained continues in the years to come. Thank you.